Okay, so we're on now. Right, so data flow diagrams. This is part of SSADM. So I'm doing this short little lecture to recap over the things we did in the lesson and to highlight what you need to put in your assignment. Also, for anyone who's interested in what data flow diagrams actually are. Well, they're part of SSADM. What is SSADM? Structured Systems Analysis and Design Method. It really focuses on the design aspect. So it's not about implementation and testing and anything like that. It's what are the things that you need in the system, so requirements gathering, and how do you analyze what is needed, and then how are you going to design it technically. And it works best perhaps with a waterfall approach or a sequential approach, because each step needs to be very clearly done and finished before the next one, it doesn't cut the corners, it doesn't, and it gets all the requirements. So it captures the requirements and design, as I've said. What things could be included in SSADM? Well, data flow diagrams, which we're going to talk about now. Entity relationship diagrams to do with databases. Capturing requirements, you could use questionnaires. Data dictionaries will show what sort of data is in your database. Process descriptors and flow charts. So moving on to SSADM, so I'll move myself out of the way there. What is SSADM? In VISIO, which I'm going to show you in a minute, we are using this Gane and Sarsen model, and these are the symbols. However, in these slides, SSADM model is going to be used, and they're slightly different, but they mean the same thing. So the first one, the square, is an entity. So a person, a customer, or the kitchen, say if you're modeling a restaurant. The second one, which is like a rectangle, is a process. So take the order, produce the manager's report. Store is the data store. So a data store could be a database technically, or I suppose if you were describing a system, it could even be someone writing something down that they hand to someone, right? But you're trying to model this entire system. And the key thing is the arrow, the flow of data. So in the assignment that you have to produce for my class, you will need to explain what the symbols are, as I've just done, the rules of data flow diagrams. You need to create a level 0 diagram for a restaurant, which I've got here, and a level 1 diagram for a restaurant, which will show more detail of the system, what processes, entities, and data stores you've got, whereas the level 0 is just an overview. So these are the symbols in Gane and Sarsen, which I showed before. Again, a process, something that happens. Entity, user of the system. Data store, where you record info. An arrow is the flow of data. What are the rules? First rule, you don't have data flowing into a process without it flowing out. So here, for example, these are allowed, but these ones are not allowed because even though there's data flowing out, there's nothing flowing in. That doesn't make any sense. And you can have multiple bits of data flowing in and out, but there has to be data flowing in and out, and that's the main rule. Another rule of data flow diagrams, don't flow into an entity from another entity or flow into an entity from a data store. So a customer cannot send data directly to a manager. A data store cannot send directly to a customer. There needs to be a process in between. For example, the customer may want to make a complaint, but that complaint is a process, and then that goes to the manager. The data store may want to send information to the manager about what stock is left, but the process is get stock report. So that's what's allowed, and this is what is not allowed. The last rule is you cannot flow from one data store to the next, or from one entity to a store. So only processes that can flow into a store or store into a process. So a data store cannot flow into a data store. You can't retrieve something from a database and then store it in a database. There must be something going on in there, like retrieve login details, but there's a process that goes in between that, would check login details, in which they'd get the data from the database, check them, and then store them back in, for example, or maybe register. You're getting the data from a database, or you're checking someone doesn't exist in the database, and then you're storing it back in. There must be a process in between. And a customer, for example, can't go directly into a data store. There must be a process such as login, and then it can go into the data store to check the information or register them. So you then, once you've described those processes, entities, data flow, arrows, and processes. So it's processes, entities, flow of data, and data stores, and you've described the rules. You then need to create this level 0 diagram. I suggest doing it for a restaurant. It's very simple. So for example, in this level 0 diagram, all we've got is all the entities, so all the people that use the system, the flow of data between the entities, and the one main process that will describe the whole system. So a customer will want to make an order, and that order is passed into our food ordering system, and then that process passes out flowing data into the kitchen to make the food order and into data reports for the manager and to produce a customer receipt. So your system should be simple enough to describe in one main process, and you should know what entities are. The level 1 is a much more detailed view. So in the level 1, we're going to show what happens when the customer makes an order. So the extra thing we're basically showing here is the data stores. So we're showing all of the processes, not just one of them, all of the entities, the flow of data between them, and the data stores. So for example, a customer making an order and the manager getting a report from it is a bit more complicated. So when the customer makes the order is received. Now that order is going to go two ways. It's either going to go to the kitchen to make the order, so the kitchen receives the order and makes it, or it's going to go into update the stock to say what things have been sold. This process is going to update this file or this database, and then that database is going to be requested to produce a manager's report, so another process. So the stock will go into this that will produce a report. The same thing for takings as well. We receive the order, it goes into a process to update takings file that gets stored in the database about how many things they've sold, what profits, and that will go then into the process to produce the report that goes to the manager. So you're breaking this down into all the different processes and all the data stores. It's really important you do this, because the next thing you do after DFD is ERD, and that means you need to understand what data stores you've got and what bits of data and fields you're going to have in them. Right, so that's it. Short lecture. So if you're in my class, you can click on this link and look at the worksheet where you're going to need to produce your own data flow diagram, get a bit of practice. And then once you've done that, and you've read the document, you've understood the rules, you've understood the symbols, created level 0 and 1, go and put this into your report for the assignment. Thank you. Again, this is what you need to do. Pause this if you're not sure or you want to remember what you've got to do. Thank you.